I'm a church planter, and at the same time, I'm passionate about everything that is online, that is digital, that is connected to creativity and media. And I don't know if you have already written your thank you letter at the forum. Yes? Well, be careful what you write there, because last year I wrote about my ministry, and somebody thought it should be a great idea if you listen to my story this year. So maybe next year you will be speaking. You never know. So this lecture will be mostly based about my experience with podcasting and media. On February the 3rd, 2020, Barna Group released its State of the Church report. So this is the State of the Church report. And there was a question. Pastors and leaders in church were asked what's on their mind. And the very last thing on the bottom was keeping up with the latest digital and technological trends. So February 2020, asking pastors and leaders in church in US, what's on your mind? The least thing that was on their mind was the digital media and the online stuff. And as you know, this was released only a month before the pandemic. Yeah, the COVID, the pandemic hit everyone, I believe. We have all the same experience. And suddenly, the world turned upside down. And the companies that were able to go online, to go digital, suddenly those companies were the most profitable companies. Their profits skyrocketed. And suddenly, we didn't go to buy groceries by ourselves or buy lunch to a restaurant, but we used the apps. I don't know what app did you use. We used the Volt in Slovakia. Maybe you use Uber Eats or Bolt Food. Volt, yeah. Do you play the game in a Volt where you have to click? Not yet. That's a good one. Suddenly, we didn't go to the movies. We had the Netflix. We had the Disney Plus. We had, I don't know, all kinds of streaming platforms. And we didn't go to in-person meetings, but for many, many weeks and months, we used Zoom. So all of our churches were suddenly using Zoom. Maybe some were punished by using Microsoft Teams. I don't know, it doesn't work on my platform. But this is how the world turned. And what's interesting is that even after all the lockdowns, when we got back to normal, the culture was changed. Even nowadays, if in our denomination in Slovakia, when we were usually having in-person meetings, today we have the Zoom meetings. Not in a church, but on a national level. So on a national level, we had all kinds of gatherings. The pastors gathering, the accountants of church gatherings, and suddenly you don't have to travel, you just have the Zoom meeting, and in 2 hours it's over. Even after COVID and after lockdowns, you have a Netflix and chill dates. You don't go to cinema sometimes, you just turn on Netflix or whatever you use. And even today, after COVID, if you are too tired to cook, you just order your food. And it's absolutely normal. It's normal because we got used to it. So the world has changed, and the question is, how are we doing? How are we doing as a church? How are we doing as a missions organization? How are we doing as a Christians? How effective are we in using the new situation, the new reality, in order to share the gospel around us? And I will share in a few moments how that worked for us. Our story is that just before COVID, we started a small podcast ministry, and the COVID catapulted that, and we became the Christian #1 podcast in our country because of the COVID situation. So I always have had, and I have a passion that people in Slovakia would know, follow, and love Jesus. And this is the way of achieving that, to use online media. So today I will just share what I've learned on my journey and hopefully you will be able to use it by yourself. And I truly believe that every one of you, as you sit over here, you have a role somewhere in the online world that you can fill in. So the question is, why should we talk about how to use online space and digital technologies to advance the gospel? Is it because it's a great idea? Yes, maybe. I think it's a great idea. But even more, it's not only a great idea, it's part of the Great Commission. To be truly faithful to Great Commission, I'm convinced that we have to think about online media and digital media as well. And I will explain why. So the first part of the Great Commission goes like this. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. And then it continues. But there are three important points in the first part of the Great Commission. The first point is go. It doesn't say, Jesus didn't say, wait until they come to you. When they come to you, tell what's on your heart. He says go. It's proactive. It's going somewhere. It's moving towards someone. And it's important to know that when Jesus was giving us the Great Commission, he didn't really have on his mind build a building, make a program there every Sunday, and if nobody shows up, it's their problem. He literally sent us somewhere towards someone. So it's moving towards. The second point is it's about making disciples. So when Jesus said that we should go and make disciples, he was speaking about transformation, not only information. So it's not wait until they come and you give them all their knowledge and then they leave. It's about go towards them and be part of their transformation. Of course, giving them information is part of the deal, but the goal is that people will be transformed to new beings, new people. And the third point is all nations. It's unknown others. Nona Jones, that wrote the book From Social Media to Social Ministry, says this idea. We can use social technology to swim out into the deep, unknown waters of the digital world to connect with people we would never meet otherwise. So if we are talking about going and making disciples of all nations, then if all nations is unknown others, then the online space is part of the deal. It's part of what it means to go to unknown others. So maybe some of you or some of people in church feel calling to go to Africa, China, India, to Europe. Many people travel to Europe and do missions in Europe, maybe Latin America. Maybe it means doing a local camp for youth. It has all kinds of expressions, what it means to go to unknown others, but it includes the online space. So when I'm thinking about gospel and online space and digital media and the Great Commission, I'm thinking about transformative movement toward others or unknown others. So this is what we are talking about. So if we're talking about, hey, I'm a Christian and there's this podcast opportunity, or hey, I'm a Christian and there's this YouTube channel opportunity, or TikTok, or whatever you want to use, this is what I have on my mind, to be part of a transformative movement toward others. So this picture is the town center of Žilina. That's the town where I'm living currently. So if you visit us, I can take you to the city square. We can have an ice cream down there at the corner. There's great ice cream, big and tasty. We have some really good food over there. But this would be, in our region, this would be typical center of the town. That was a cultural shock for me when I came to US for the first time. I realized there are no town centers like that in US. It's typical European stuff. And this is something Bill Gates said about these city squares. He said that the internet is becoming the town square for the global village of tomorrow. So usually, typically, in history, town squares were the place where people met and they shared ideas and they did business together. And the social life was happening there. And a big technological guy like Bill Gates, he says, well, internet is not only a tool, but it's actually a place of future where people will share their ideas, do the business, meet together, have fun together. That's what's happening right now. Again, Nona Jones says the internet is not just the thing people do, it's the place where people live. What we can see is decline in church attendance nowadays. The fastest growing group in Slovakia, and I think it's not only in Slovakia, it's also in your countries as well. The fastest growing group as far as religion is concerned are nones, non-affiliated. It's almost 25% right now in Slovakia. Those people are not necessarily atheists, but they are not affiliated to any church. They live their sometimes spiritual life, but outside of church. And one of the reasons why church is in decline, the attendance of church is in decline, is that people can find their spiritual communities online. It's one of the reasons. It's not that people would not be interested in spiritual issues. It's rather than they don't go to the physical places or spaces, but they go online. And I will get to that later as well. So internet is not only a thing, it's a place. And I think we can understand this really well when we are talking about our experience with internet. So children in schools are bullied on internet. It's not just a thing. It's a place where actually bullying can happen. Or somebody wrote an idea that just imagine that you're in a marriage and your spouse has a virtual affair on internet. The spouse never met the person, never will meet the person, only writes messages with the person and is emotionally involved. Can we tell it's not real? It's not happening because it's online? No, it's real, it's happening. Because internet is not only a tool, it's space where actually life happens. And maybe one funny story is that during the COVID, when there was a lockdown and everyone was, in Slovakia, it was really strict. So we were at home, like locked in our homes. And I decided to spend some time with my friends and friends of my friends. So I started to play Counter-Strike with our youth. And I was playing that before going to bed late night. And it was not only playing the game, it was having the Discord channel turned on. I had the phone and earphones. I was talking to the people. And we actually had the experience together. And there were guys from all over the Slovakia in the team playing together. And my youth introduced me to their teammates. And they said, hey, this guy, that's our pastor. So I was running with the gun, throwing grenades, and talking about Jesus with the guys. And when we meet afterwards, or when we met afterwards, it was actually experience we had together. It was not virtual, it was real in a sense that they can tell the story to their friends that they were playing Counter-Strike with the pastor from Žilina. So it's not a tool, it's a real place where people have their communities, their channels. It's the square of the future, town square of the future, where love happens, life happens, hurt happens, experience happens, is the real place. And many people understand this, and we have this new digital evangelists that understand that this is the future town square. Maybe this guy. Do you know this guy? You know this guy, Mr. Beast. He's one of the most famous influencers. If you take all his channels together, it's more than 400,000 followers, which is more than is the population of USA. 400 million. Okay, I'm English. Okay, 400 million followers, which is more than a population of USA. Single guy with his team. And it's not about only videos he's doing. He created a community of followers. I bought a violet, like really shiny, bright violet jacket I wore. And I was going through Žilina, through my town, and somebody just told me, hey, you look like a Mr. Beast. Somebody in Slovakia just met me, going from my work to home, and he told me I look like a Mr. Beast. You know, it's a culture, it's a community. 400 million followers. Do you know this guy? Yeah, Gary Vaynerchuk. He's an entrepreneur, a really, really smart guy. I follow his Instagram, and he's really like quick, fast, passionate, energetic. And he doesn't only give business advice, but he also encourages people. He creates some kind of a culture of a positive thinking where he encourages you to go through the life. So people who follow him and who go to his lectures and who follow his Instagram and listen to him, it's not only about business advice, it's about the attitude towards life. So many people find answers to their spiritual questions, basically spiritual questions, on his channel. And the last example, this lady is called Amy Purdy, and she has bionic legs. I'm not sure if you can see that, but her legs are artificial. And again, she has really positive Instagram channel where she helps people to cope with the stress, cope with the life, have a positive attitude. See, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And these kind of messages. So again, it's the online world, it's the digital space where people can find new ideas, listen to new ideas, communicate new ideas, meet new people, and they're fulfilled somehow. And that's the reason why they retreat from physical spaces. So the question is, where is the church? Where are the Christians as far as online space and digital world is concerned? And that's the question we need to answer for ourselves. Where are we in this story? We might be a little bit skeptical. I don't know about your context, but in Slovakia, this was an issue when COVID hit. And our church, for instance, went instantly online. We knew that, we could tell that the lockdowns are going to happen. So even before the government issued the lockdown, we had prepared the online streaming service. We knew that will happen. So we were one of the first churches that were streaming online. And then we had the backlash with some other churches that were debating whether we should do this, whether this is okay, if this is even a real thing to do the church service online. And I agree, that's a great issue to talk about. But there are some thoughts I want you to think about. When the printing press was created and the copies of sermons became more widely available, preachers assumed people would skip church or revivals in favor of reading the message later. That's not my idea, it's Nona Jones's idea. When radio was invented, preachers were afraid to air sermons. Out of fear, people would stop showing up and would instead listen later. When television became mainstream, pastors were reluctant to join the bandwagon because giving people the ability to watch from home would surely decrease church attendance. When the internet picked up steam, many churches refused to have a website, preferring that people call and get information from a live person. When social media became a way of life, pastors refused to create an account, citing, I don't want everyone in my business, etc., etc. With every new technological advancement, there's a skepticism whether this will not go against the church. But the truth is that every technological advancement can be used by the church and should be used by the church because people are there anyway. So, yes, let's say TikTok videos are truths compressed into 1-minute video. Is that long enough to express a deeper thought? Is 1 minute enough? I don't know. You can say no. Well, no, okay. Is it fair that you are forced to have a 1-minute video on TikTok? No, it's not fair, but it's a reality. The reality is that people want to see and are watching videos that are 1 minute long, and they build their worldviews based on 1 minute long or 30 seconds long TikTok videos. And the question is not whether I like it or not, but whether I will step in and bring gospel into environment where people are anyway. Yeah. So what are the opportunities? The digital square is different than a public square, the real square, because the digital square is for anyone, anywhere, anytime. Anyone can join. Previously on the squares, there were men sitting and debating and kids were playing somewhere. But now it's anyone can join. 13 years old girl in Slovakia and 55 years old guy in China. Anyone can join the same the square anywhere and anytime. If I miss the conversation today, I can listen to the conversation tomorrow. I can watch the TikTok video in a year. I can watch the YouTube video in 5 years. So this is tremendous change. And at the same time, the online public square offers us unparalleled opportunities to share the gospel. Maybe one year ago, I had to change my light in the light bulb in my tail light in my car. This is not my car, but at least on a picture I can have BMW. And I knew if I ask my mechanic to change the light, I will have to pay. You know, it can be expensive. So I decided to change the tail light by myself. So what was the procedure? YouTube, of course. That was YouTube. How to change tail light on Volkswagen, da-da-da-da-da. And there it popped up. I took my toolbox. I took my phone. I used the phone, and in 5 minutes, the light was changed. I never knew how I can do that, but YouTube taught me. And internet has changed the way we make decisions forever. Like the way of making decisions is changed forever. And Google has a name for it. This is the name, Zero Moment of Truth. So Zero Moment of Truth is a quote, a new decision-making moment that takes place 100 million times a day on mobile phones, laptops, and wired devices of all kinds. So it's the moment before you do a purchase or you make a decision. It's a moment when you decide to do the research online. So before you enter the store, you already have been online surfing through Reddit, through all kinds of forums, making your own opinion. And this applies not only to buying guitar or car. By the way, this is my zero moment of truth right now. I'm trying to research which guitar should I buy. I'm a big Telecaster fan. There are many options. So this doesn't apply only to the guitar, but it also applies to the faith and life questions and opinions about church, opinions about anything, politics. When people have their ZMOT, zero moment of truth, they Google. They Google or go to YouTube. And the question is, when people search online questions about hell, heaven, life, love, Jesus, God, are you happy with the search results that appear? Are we happy with what the Google offers or search results offer us as an answer? I don't know about you, but in my context, I'm not really happy. I believe better answers should be available for people who are having their zero moment of truth and are having big questions about life. So, and now we are getting to my story of podcasting. So there are many options how we can enter the digital space and how we can become part of people's zero moment of truth. There's the TikTok, there's the Facebook, there's the Instagram, there's X. I still have this tick like it's a Twitter, but it's not anymore, and YouTube, and etc. There are many options. And each of those apps, each of those platforms has different audience and different purpose, different way of using that. So our weapon of choice, in our case, is a podcast. Basically, what I used to say is that podcasting is the new radio. So it's very similar to radio, but it has all the advantages of the modern streaming technologies, which means I will get to it. But basically, it's for everyone, anyone, everywhere, anytime. one of the famous podcasters, Sarah Koenig, said that podcasting is a medium that allows anyone to share their voice and their message with the world, and it's changing the way we consume and create content. So I hope that after sharing my story, you will be at least thinking about doing podcasts for someone. Maybe that will be interesting for you. So at some time, I think it was 2018-19, me and my colleague, we read an article in Slovakia that the biggest or largest influencers are moving from YouTube to podcast, vloggers especially at that point. So me and my colleague, we thought, oh, that's a good opportunity to jump in. And if the content is changing to podcasting, we can be one of the first people who will be on board in Slovakia. And it turned out to be a great idea because one of the reasons that it worked was that we jumped on early or soon enough, jumped on the train. What I like about podcast is that it almost has no rules. There are 5-minute podcasts. There are 3 hours long podcasts. And if you think nobody will listen to 3 hours podcast, they will. Some of the most famous and popular podcasts in the world are 2 or 3 hours long. And people listen to that every week. Imagine, nobody would listen to me preaching 3 hours on Sunday. But almost every member of my church would be okay with listening to a 3-hour podcast, which gives me an opportunity to step in and be part of the podcast world. And at the same time, it's really easy to enter, technically, to enter the podcasting, because all you need is a phone with a microphone. Because nowadays we have an AI that enhances the sound of a phone in such a great extent that it's almost impossible to distinguish between the phone recording and the studio recording. So you can record yourself on a phone, go through the AI processor, and the resulting sound sounds professional, like studio quality recording. So this is the picture of our first recording. That's Jose. Actually, it's funny because he's from Spain, but he speaks perfect Slovak. He's really fluent in Slovak, and he's my colleague. He's a pastor. This was taken 5 years ago. Now we look different. We look like this. And we decided to record a podcast. We created the concept, the name of the podcast, design of the podcast, and the whole first season of the podcast. We made it in 1 day, in 10 hours or 12 hours. And that was it. That's how we launched. We met for a day, recorded it, made a graphic design, uploaded it. That was it. And
So
yeah.
you talked for 12 hours?
Yes. No, well, we the first season we made short episodes. But yeah, we were working 12 hours.
Okay.
And then you broke it into smaller.
Yes. So we did a script and we said, okay, we want 5 episodes. Each episode will cover this thing, and then we recorded 5 episodes in a row, and then I did the editing and mastering. So I will explain you the concept. So the concept of the podcast is that we are just 2 friends, pastors, Spanish, living in Slovakia, and a Slovak guy talking about faith and life on microphone. And the image we have in our head is that we are sitting in a city center, in a square that I showed you, the square of Žilina. We are sitting there with our mics and speakers, and anyone can listen to us who is passing by. Because that's the reality. Anyone can listen to the podcast. And we wanted from the day one our podcast to be serving people who necessarily don't agree with us. They don't necessarily understand us as a Christians. Maybe they're even suspicious or cynical. And those would be the types of people or kind of people you would meet in Žilina if you would go for a walk and have an ice cream. So from day one, that was image in our head. Anyone, anytime, anywhere can listen to this. And we want to speak in a way that is respectful and understandable. So we decided to do no editing. So we record 1 hour, no edits, we put it online. So that really keeps us thinking how we speak about stuff. maybe we have recorded 300 hours of material. Maybe we did 5 edits during those 5 years, maybe because we did some not good joke or something. And we have it reviewed with our wives and friends, and they said, oh, you should cut this away. So maybe 5 edits, but that's all. No editing. We are brutally honest, and that's the reason why people want to listen to our podcast, because finally, some pastors in Slovakia are honest about church, about life, about their family life, and people are curious about celebrities. And we're not celebrities, but we are pastors. And everyone is curious, at least in Slovakia, how does the life of the pastor look like? So that was pretty easy. So to be brutally honest and respectful. So in Slovakia, the majority of Slovaks are still religious. The largest denomination is Roman Catholic Church, then it's the Lutheran Church, and then nothing, and the evangelical churches. So we are really like 0.5% of Slovaks are evangelical. So anytime we speak our opinions, we have to be aware that people from another denominations are listening to us. And we are extra careful to be respectful, even though we are clear about our convictions. And somehow we were able to manage to do that. So even people that are listening from different types of churches, they give us feedback that even though we're clear on our beliefs, they feel respected. And that's the reason why they actually continue to listen to our podcast, because they are curious about our opinions and takes on issues. And also, we decided that from day one, our podcast will be relationally connected with our listeners. And I will show you some pictures how that works for us. So we knew that if we want to enter the online space, it's not only about streaming content, but it's also about listening to our listeners and inviting them into creating together with us. So I will show you how we do that. So this was day one, horrible, and now it's like this. The guy in the middle is our guest. We sometimes have guests, and he brought us t-shirts. The t-shirt says, "You are not alone." So that was the topic of the series or season we were doing. So we have this new place where we can record. And as I said, that COVID catapulted us because suddenly people were sitting at home, and the fact that people are living online and are searching for answers online was magnified, was absolutely magnified during the lockdown. So it helped us to be more visible, more useful. We had more listeners. So 2 years in a row, we won the national competition in Christian podcasts. So we got some awards. This is from the TV. And we started thinking, okay, we are not only streaming content online, but we got feedback that people are using our content as a discipleship tool. So teachers are using our content in schools. Youth leaders are using our content as a small group material. Some preachers use our content to preach their sermons, etc., etc. So we invited volunteers to help us with that, and they helped us to create materials. So today, it's not only about me and Jose recording a podcast, but it's also thinking about how we can repackage and redistribute and repurpose what was already said on the podcast. And some of these guys, they listen to the podcast, write the notes. Some of them translate from Slovak to Czech or from Czech to Slovak, so it's in both countries then. Some of them take care of websites, social media, and this is only 7 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now we are 11, even more. They help us. Mostly they are volunteering, but at the same time we are fundraising and getting some funds so we could give them at least some gift for their time that they spend with us, because we don't want a big turnover. If you change volunteers too much, you have to teach them again and again and again. So it's good for us if they stay with us long term. So what we started to do is we started writing books. We wrote actually 3 books based on the podcast. And thanks to the podcast, they were sold out as they came out from the print. Because people were listening to us, we announced the books. And again, the books are meant also as a study material, so they were sold out. The first is called An Ordinary Influencer. It's about purpose of life and the idea that each of us is given an influence. Somebody has 100,000 followers or 400 million followers like Mr. Beast. Somebody has only 2 people in his life or her life, but it's influence that we are supposed to cherish and do as best as we can. So that's the message of the book. The second book is called The Reason I Don't Want to Be a Christian. And the book is based on an idea that was said by Timothy Keller. He said, tell me what type of God you don't believe. Maybe I don't believe that God either. And we're trying to explain our friends in Slovakia that their criticism of religion and Christianity is maybe correct. Maybe we should criticize that type of Christianity we have in Slovakia. Maybe we should remind ourselves what the Christianity is really about. So this book deconstructs the popular view of Christianity in Slovakia and builds what we believe is the gospel view of Christianity. And the last book is called Leave Me Alone, and it's about how to be a non-anxious presence in anxious world. It's very actual, this book. It came out just recently because we have similar problems like all Western countries, very polarized society because of the COVID situation, the war at Ukraine situation, the politics. Maybe you don't know, maybe you know, there was a shooting. They tried to assassinate our prime minister in Slovakia. So the society is polarized. And it's not only society, it's also in the families. So families are angry because they don't agree politically with each other. They don't agree on many issues. So we decided to bring Jesus and gospel to the situation. So the book is not trying to give a new advice how to handle and manage conflicts, because we have many great books about conflict management. But what we need is somebody helping us to see how Jesus and gospel can change the situation. Okay, so those are the books, those are the materials. So this is how it looks like. You can get those and use that with our podcast and study with your youth ministry or youth group. At some point we did some e-learning stuff. So we were invited to record what we do on podcast as an e-learning. That's actually, I believe this is a big thing for church, to use e-learning opportunities where you combine online videos with small groups. But that's for another topic, maybe Q&A. And what we started to do is that we encouraged our listeners to visit us in Žilina anytime they go through Žilina. And some people actually did trip to Žilina, to our town, only to see us and meet us. And thus we want to create a community. It's not only us recording something and putting online, but it's also inviting people to talk to us, to engage with us, to have a relationship. So this is one of the guys that visited us. He came all across the Slovakia to visit us in Žilina. He's from east, we're in west. He brought us some coffee. He knows we like coffee. We're eating some burgers. These are different people, the same restaurant. We have the favorite place. Actually, we mention food in every single episode. We always mention some kind of food. There's another person, the same restaurant. Another people, the same restaurant. So, and we always post it online. We say, hey, another listeners stopped by, we had a talk, and we posted, we tag the restaurant always. So they're happy that we make the promotion. Last time they gave us free bacon because they said, you helped us to survive COVID. So, and when group as this come and visit us, we always have conversations that go deeper. But this meeting is possible only because we are present online. If we were not, this wouldn't happen. And sometimes people invite us to go to their camps or youth meetings, and whenever possible, we just travel and do the speaking engagement or in some library. One couple even invited us to their wedding, not as guests, but we officiated the wedding. And we're from Slovakia. This is in Czech Republic, actually. So they're big fans of our podcast, not only them, but also their parents. And they told us that we are on the journey with them, or they are on a journey with us for many years as they listen to our podcast. And they invited us to be their pastors for this moment, of course, with agreement with their pastor. So we know their pastor, or we made a arrangement, And both of us at the same time, we officiated. And it's just a nice and beautiful example of that. If we do the online ministry, it's really where life happens, where people have the feeling you are their pastor in a sense, because you cannot be really their pastor, but you are part of their life. You journey together through life. And the thing is that it's not an information, the podcast is not just an information that is being sent, but it's something that people listen as they exercise, or as they mow the lawn, or as they cook, or as they drive. What else do I have? Or if they're sad, or have anxiety, or they have a joy, they have a baby. That's different than the book, for instance, because you read book only when you have time, when you can pay attention, unless you read audio book, but that's not reading, that's listening. But you read book when you have time and mood, and your kids are not screaming right now. You really have time. But with a podcast, it's different. It's online, it's digital, it's everywhere, anytime, anyone, remember. So just to share 4 statements that people said. It's 4 statements out of the hundreds of feedbacks we got. Number 1, that was told to us during eating burger with one of our listeners. The listener said that, Mom died, and you gave me hope. So we are part of the story of the person who just lost her mom, and the way we were talking about faith, hurt, but hope, gave the person hope to continue. The second statement, I was on my way away from the church, but you gave me reason not to. I was a father that was very skeptical and hurt by the church, and his daughter gave him our podcast, and especially one season where we were speaking about the passion and vision for the church. And the father said that it gave him sense and reason to stay at church and not go away. The third statement, I had a hard time at a secular school, and you helped me to survive. So that was a person in a very popular secular school in Slovakia, maybe only Christian in whole community. And listening to our podcast helped the student to find arguments, find peace, get confidence in surviving the environment. And the fourth, you helped me to embrace my singleness. So that was a person that was struggling with being single. The person was over the teenage years, and we had one guest that was single. We were talking for 5 episodes about singleness, about God's purpose and vision for single people. And many singles told us that it was not only beneficial and helpful, but it actually changed their lives, and they embraced their singleness, and they were really okay with being single. So, and it just took, all it took was to record podcast and put it online. Basically, if we didn't do any of those printed materials, it would only take me and Jose, take a microphone, maybe phone, record 1-hour conversation of 2 pastors, post it online. That's it. That's all. So, I don't know. The question is how we are doing with the whole online thing. Maybe we can get better, but it doesn't have to be too complicated. It can be pretty easy. It's written in the Genesis that it's not good that a man should be alone. And that's important to remember with the online media, that online media have a tendency to take us away from the physical world. And I believe that the true online ministry somehow turns us back to the physical world. There are 2 quotes from Mark Zuckerberg. This is the first. He made this statement at some conference in Chicago just a couple of years ago. If we can do this, and he's talking about Facebook, it will not only turn around the whole decline in community membership we've seen for decades, it will start to strengthen our social fabric and bring the world closer together. So even tech guru like Mark Zuckerberg knows that somehow we are designed, we're created as a social beings, and we need real human touch. So he's trying to solve it in his own way. And read this. That's what he says. Facebook can play a role that churches and Little League once filled. I believe churches should reapply for this position, and one of the future roles of the church, I believe, will be and should be inviting people from online community to physical meetings, to physical world. And that's what we try to do with inviting people who are listening to our podcasts to have a lunch with us. Of course, they are listening to our podcasts. They're everywhere in Slovakia or Czech Republic. But every time we explain how important the human touch is, how important the relationship and friendships are, how important the real church is, and we always connect the online back to offline somehow. And I'm heading towards the end, but I will read you a short thought from John Ortberg. It's about the Genesis verse. What is striking is that the fall has not yet occurred. So God says it's not good for man to be alone. And it's before the fall. There is no sin, no disobedience, nothing to mar in the relationship between God and a man. The human being is in a state of perfect intimacy with God. Each word he and God speak with each other is filled with closeness and joy. He walks with God in a garden in the cool of the day. He is known and loved to the core of his being by his omniscient, love-filled Creator. Yet, the word God uses to describe his alone. And God says this aloneness is not good. Sometimes in church circles, when people feel lonely, we will tell them not to expect too much from human relationships, that there is inside every human being a God-shaped void that no other person can fill. That is true. But apparently, according to the writer of Genesis, God creates inside this man a kind of human-shaped void that God himself will not fill. No substitute will fill this need in you for human relationship. Not money, not achievement, not business, not books, not even God himself. Even though this man was in a state of sinless perfection, he was alone and it was not good. For some reason, God decided not to step in and fill the void that was meant for another people to fill. And I just want us to remember that even though we should be passionate about the online presence, online world, and be doing our best we can, we have to remember that God created us as a relational people that need real people together. And we're entering a really weird season when we have the AI, we have the 3D technology, where probably many people will have virtual friends, AI friends, that they will be able to see 3D. They will be able to talk with, play with, eat lunch with, and church should be there inviting people to real world relationships. So this is also part of the vision for us. So we should think about going from online to offline, and what works right now for us, it's combining the streaming and social. It's streaming media and social media, like Instagram, Facebook, and inviting people to be with us. So if you want to do some further reading, there are 4 books I can recommend just as a starter. There are many more. Meta Church. This is the Nona Jones I was quoting a couple of times. Analog Church has a great vision for a church to still be in an analog world. That's a great book. I think you get the Analog Church down in a bookstore. I think I've seen the book there. So just go and grab it. And The Anxious Generation was released just recently. It explains how the digital world affects people growing up in a digital world. And it gives some advice to parents. And there's a great, actually, in the last book, there's a great chapter about, I believe, what's the role of the church in the online world. Because the author claims he's an atheist. But in this chapter, the author says that he can't help, but he must use the religious language, because we are complicated people, not only physical, but there's some spiritual part of us. And suddenly, in his atheistic words, he starts using the religious words. And you can nicely see in the book where's the place where we can step in as a church and take care of the soul of the people we're serving. So these are the 4 books. And the last idea, don't forget that we, as a people that are commissioned by Jesus to go and make disciples, are supposed to be part of a transformative movement toward others, including the online world.